Hey everybody, what's up? It's me, Ace again, and this time I'm going to be reading a fanfiction, which is something I know I haven't done in a while. There's the Mario one, but no, this is one that I think you guys might actually enjoy, rather than just being, senseless shit that I found on the internet. This is a fanfiction that I wrote when I was 12 years old, because everybody was making fan fictions, I guess, and I decided I wanted to write one. I instant messaged my online buddy one day, and I said, hey, I'm writing a fan fiction. So this is a fan fiction where the main character is a self-insert of me. I am the main character, and it's a fan fiction crossover between the Pikmin universe and the Invader Zim universe, and also there's some fantasy elements in there, I guess, and some other things. I was 12, so this is going to be really bad. But yeah, I dug this up. I remembered I had posted it on DeviantArt just recently, so I dug this up and put it on a Google Doc, so now I can actually read this if you want to read it for yourself. I'll put the link in the description, yada yada, all that good stuff. So without any further ado, let's get going into what I like to call Sprine. For some reason, I think my reasoning behind that title was that would eventually be the name that Wyatt receives. He gives a name to his power. He has superpowers in this. Of course, why wouldn't he? So, yeah, he's Mary Sue for sure. So anyway, yeah, I said without any further ado, but now, this time, without any further ado, let's get going and let's read Sprine, which is 30 chapters and also unfinished. Okay. A prologue. Ha! You're it! But that's not fair! Wyatt overheard as he was left out of the other children playing in the fields. He had been left out of the local children's activities ever since birth. He knows not why, but he thinks it has something to do with his ability to materialize and disintegrate objects before him. Many of the townsfolk thought he was quite odd as well, but the truth was, no one really knew about his powers, and he hadn't learned how to control them yet. He had no clue about his powers until the age of 15, where he learned that his father had been murdered by the seductive witch. The enragement and fear that he felt at that specific moment in time was nothing compared to anything he had felt before, causing him to destroy his own home. In the cover story, the king said that it was a house fire, but the townspeople knew that Wyatt had something to do with it. Somehow. Wyatt hadn't really thought about trying to do anything about this problem yet. All he wanted to do was grow up and live a happy life, but that future seemed pretty bleak, because everyone shunned him. Wyatt also thought about one day escaping the place where he was shunned, hoping to find a new land, where he was accepted and let free amongst others. But that future also looked bleak, because more and more of the world was getting overwhelmed by the powers of the seductive witch. So my guess is that I actually inserted the seductive witch because I was 12 years old, and I thought, if a story has sex, well, then it must be good. So, and also somehow, I had this thing when I was younger, whenever I was writing a character that had any sort of ability, whenever their emotions interfered, they just kind of made shit explode. I didn't write many RP character bios, but I wrote this one, and he did the exact same thing, he exploded his home because he was mad, so it's just a thing, I guess. Chapter 1! That night. It was a lovely, clear, cool night, and all the townspeople were safely asleep. Well, all except for Wyatt, that is. You see, Wyatt wanted to get out of his self-confinement so badly, he skipped sleep and kept himself awake all night planning ways to escape. But so far, the materials he had thought of using to escape had all failed or were useless. He was trying ever so desperately, trying to relapse his mistakes and try again, but everything had failed, and he was beginning to see the dark side of things instead of the positive. He was on the brink of breaking down when he decided that his mother did not deserve the same fate as him. He wasn't the only one being secluded. His mother was also an outcast. He couldn't take it anymore. He knew he had to put his mother out of misery. He knew that his frustration would give him the power to destroy her. All he had to do, so wait. He's trying to escape, but he thinks the next course of action, since he can't escape, he thinks the best next course of action would be to kill his mother, which I guess is the only one alive since his dad was killed by the seductive witch. AKA, I'm just coming up with reasons to kill both of his parents. All he had to do was focus on her and only her. He didn't want anything else to be destroyed because the people might get suspicious if they only see him walking around and want to check the house. He crept down the hallway with his eyes closed, trying to memorize where everything was, because if he opened his eyes, everything could be gone. Man, he must have been mad. When he walked into his mother's room, he didn't hear anything. That is, until a large object went thunk on his head. When he awoke, he found that everything around him was a barren wasteland. He knew he had caused this. He didn't want the fate to befall upon his lovely kingdom, but it did. He had to stay aware, and he wasn't, so he suffered for it. It appeared to still be nighttime, so he continued around the area looking for any signs of life. Hopefully not scared out of their shits because they just saw the guy that destroyed their home. Jesus, can you think about how bad that would be? I mean, seriously. Like, what am I rambling on about? Back to the story. And that wasn't my commentary, I actually just wrote that. He found none, and when all hope seemed to be lost, he was amazed when he saw a meteor heading directly towards the crater he had just crawled out of. He waited for it to land, then went to inspect it. When he got down to the center of the crater, his feet bleeding due to the fact that he had just slid down a crater, he reached his hand out to touch it. Just as it touched the meteor, it cracked, and the meteor disintegrated, but whatever was inside didn't. It flew out with great elegance, landed on the above crater ground, and skittered away. Wyatt was quite shocked by this, considering the only thing he had ever seen that wasn't human was a moose. Yet, he could not chase after it because of the pain in his feet. Chapter 2. Wyatt continued to examine the remains of the meteor of the meteor landing site. Whilst uncovering the meteor dust, he happened to discover what seemed to be a strange robot. He reached for it, but then remembered what happened when he touched the meteor, so he decided to leave it be for now while he tried to set up camp. He looked around the scattered wastes of what seemed to be a cheesy recreation scene for a movie about Mars. He did the best he could do to find some sort of cave, but all he found was a shack made of human corpses. Not the most comfortable thing to sleep in, but it would have to do. So he found himself a pre-made shack of dead bodies. Man, now that's dark. He had to make sure not to touch anything or else it would shatter before him. For the next few days he lived off of lizard meat and the remains of the moose that were once raised in town. He decided he couldn't live here anymore since it was drained of all life. He went back down to the crater to retrieve the robot, and when he touched it, its eyes lit up with bright red, and began to grow all sorts of seemingly overpowering and futuristic weapons. Wyatt saw no need for these and immediately destroyed them. The robot was... See, there's just no continuity here. He can't control his powers, which is the reason why he wasn't touching anything. So he decided to touch something, and then, all of a sudden, he can destroy them. He has control, all of a sudden. That's not, that's some good story writing. The robot was resorting to emergency resources, so he sprang a jetpack and flew away, looking for its master. Wyatt was still confused all about what was going on with these strange beings, but he couldn't waste time on his curiosity. He had to get out of there before it got dark again. So he packed up and headed out. What he had to pack up, I'm not sure. Meanwhile, it was getting dark outside, and not much time was to waste for our alien friend to contact HQ. Oh man, I need a voice for an alien, an Irkin voice, like, Zim. It's not how all the Irkins sound. And, I'm just going to say this now. She's female. I haven't said that yet, but she's female, so... Tallest Red, this is Arctave. I found what seems to be life on this somehow now desolate planet. What should I do with it? Kill it. It's only helpful if we have both male and female specimens. Understood. Arc out. And also, there's no, Arctave said, or Tallest Red said. The quotes are just kind of there. Ark began to follow Wyatt down the path of the never-ending wastelands. Wyatt came to a stop by a large stone to rest up. Ark took this as her chance to get rid of the pest. But how to do it, she wondered. She wanted to be creative, but not complicated. She was always getting herself confused with big plans. She thought that maybe she could sleep on it, not thinking about the results of her actions. When the morning came, Ark woke up and noticed that Wyatt was nowhere to be found. In concur, she screeched the deadly, terrible, horrifying scream that sounded a bit like... Warg? The seductive witch was watching all of this in the comfort of her own home with her special what-the-fuck orb. She thought it would be nice to have a weapon such as that on her side, deadly, yet too stupid to realize any betrayal that she could pull upon it. She instantly sent 3 of her best men to try and tame the beast. It would take some days for them to get to Ark. Wyatt was finally finding some hope when he discovered grass. Not pure green, nice, my lawn is kick-ass grass. No, but slightly tan. However, this did show signs of life. Ark was still doing her best to try and catch up with Wyatt, but she did not know which way he went. She was beginning to get quite frustrated and let out another screech. This time, it was close enough for Wyatt to hear, and he was a bit worried. He began to pick up the pace. He didn't want whatever was following him to cause any harm to the new land he might be discovering. Chapter 4. Here it was. Ark, 200 miles of sand and rock, total confusion, no friends, and no rations. What would Ark do in a situation like this? Well, let's just say it involves an airplane, a surfboard, and some hot dogs. This was the first time Ark didn't decide to stick to the hot dogs in a cup and pretend it was... Never mind. Anyways, no, this time Ark was smart. She kept her wits about her. Ark was about ready to let out another screech, for some reason. I mean, you can only get so mad before you start to, just stop being mad. Start actually realizing your situation. I don't think I've ever met a person who was just so angry that they screamed, then waited a couple minutes, then screamed again, and then waited a few more minutes, and then decided to scream again. Anyway, she was about ready to let out another screech when she heard something behind her. She turned around and noticed that it wasn't Wyatt, nor was it anything she had seen before. What, or who was it? What did it want, and why was it there? Well, whatever it was, Ark didn't like it, so she changed into battle mode. And I have not described this life form yet. 6 sharp, giant, ant-like legs stuck out of her back, and she had spikes grown all over her body now. Whatever the unknown life form was, it was tall, had bronze body armor, and appeared to be carrying a battle axe. Apparently, this thing wasn't very intimidated by Ark's looks, because he almost instantly swung at her. Ark caught the battle axe in her ant-like appendage and grew a smile. Chapter 5. The armor swiftly flung itself around Ark with the pole handle of the axe, appeared behind her, clicked the axe out of Ark's arm, and struck it into her back. Ark screeched in pain, then turned her head around a 180-degree angle and spat acidic liquids at him. The acid melted the very matter landmark of the armor's suit, and there was nothing inside but a shadow figure that swiftly flew out of the new hole that was created by the acid. The shadow flew high into the sky, and Ark began to walk away, pondering what it could have been. Just as she regained sight of Wyatt again, the shadow flew right back down and tackled Ark into the ground. It hit her with so much force that it created a crater. Wyatt saw the dust flames in the air and began to sprint away in fear. Ark lifted herself up and found the shadow had spread into fog above her. The fog was slowly trickling down into the crater. Ark tried to swing at it, but nothing happened. The shadow simply followed Ark's arm to slide through it. The shadow simply allowed Ark's arm to slide... Oh, okay, I guess it makes sense. Ark figured if this happened with her arm, she could just simply fly through the top of it all. She rocketed to her feet and made a jump out of the crater. The shadow sprang up numerous appendages, grabbed Ark by her shoulders, arms, legs, and pretty much everywhere, and flung her back into the trap. Ark cried in despair. Overhead, a figure was zooming through the sky, came to a sudden stop, and plummeted down towards the area, busted through the shadowy smoke, and proclaimed, "Arctave, miss! Reporting for duty!" Ark's eyes suddenly lit up with hope. She shouted, "Attack the smoke!" The robot almost instantly grew a plethora of... stubs. Ark grew unsettled again. The two of them sat there, Ark in the fetal position, the robot attempting to fend off the smoke with its arms. Ark got frustrated with all of it, picked up the robot, and flung it into the smoke. It busted out the other side, but yet again, the shadow just flung it back into the pit. Ark was now thinking of ways to escape the situation. She tried so many things, but almost all had failed. She only had one option left. She strapped her pack? It's an all-cap uppercase, so I guess it's like a backpack or some sort of futuristic pack onto the back of the robot. pressed a combination of buttons on the pack, and appeared on a tiny screen read Terrorist Mode. Ark flung the robot back into the air, and the robot shouted, "For Osama, a lee 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 lee," as he pressed a big red button on his back. There was then a large and obnoxious explosion, with robot parts spraying out everywhere. As the Shadow attempted to catch all these parts at once, Ark leapt from the pit and propelled herself onto the surrounding area. She then sprinted away, tears flowing from her eyes at the loss of her mechanical companion. The Shadow rose up and into the sun. It floated high above the area and blocked out the sunlight, thus making eternal darkness flood. Ark could barely see anything, but she just kept running, when she bumped into something else. The figure seemed to be spawned from the happiest of a child's dreams. Ark studied it a bit, but before she could get any real analysis on it, it lunged at her, with its mouth open. It clamped its sharp teeth. See, the figure seemed to be spawned from the happiest of a child's dreams isn't exactly enough description for you to get an idea of what exactly it is. It clamped its sharp teeth onto Ark's arm and attempted to tear it off. Ark screeched in pain and pulled one of her ant arms around and smacked it across the ground. The cute, bunny-like creature gaped its mouth into the sky as if it were getting an exorcism. Suddenly, a humongous, red, demonic hand launched out of the creature's throat and slammed into the ground, creating a shockwave that sent Ark flying backwards and onto her back. Ark got up and rattled her head to get the ringing out of her ears. She then plucked one of her many spikes out of her leg and tossed it like a spear at the giant hand. To Ark's luck, the spike simply bounced off and landed on the ground like a dud bomb. The rabbit portion of the creature then gagged insensibly and shot the rest of the hand out of its mouth, then tumbled to the ground like a rag doll. Basically, all that there was a hand and a very thin arm with a spiked ball at the end of that arm. Then, 8 large eyes lit up with a neon green color, this light emitting from the eyes being Ark's only hint as to where the creature was. Yeah, so that's pretty much the gist of this story. If you want me to keep reading it, I mean, I know I haven't gotten to the Pikmin part yet, but the implication is that Arctave is actually an Urkin soldier. Pikmin comes in a little bit later, but if you want me to keep reading this, I know it's pretty bad, but go ahead, leave a comment and all that. I'll catch you around the block.